I've been thinking for a while about doing some of this for two reasons. Um, One, I think that even though writing is such a passion for me, and it's a way that I can process what's going on, and I think I can communicate to you more clearly that way. It also, if you haven't met me or if we haven't been face to face for a long time, there's a limit. Like you can read into that what you want, especially in terms of tone and stuff like that. It's just a real limitation of communicating on the internet. And so I'd been thinking about doing some videos sometimes just so that you can see, you know, where I'm at with this, like who I am in it, and see that it's real for me. Um, and as well, I think that sometimes the the writing comes off kind of formal or instructive, and want I don't want that. I want, when I'm sharing something, I want you to know that it's coming from my heart, it's coming from my experience, and it's not intended to be, you know, here I am, look at me, let me show you. It's sharing. Like what I always am excited about with this stuff is, and I try to say this to people, and I think sometimes they don't believe me, but if there's anything that I say or write or do that has value, that has some kind of impact, it's because of God. Like it's not coming from me. And I don't say that to be like inviting compliment or inviting input from people. It's a legitimate truth. Like for those of you who knew me, 15, 20 years ago, that I was screwed up and messed up and irresponsible and unreliable and selfish and narcissistic and just so many things that I don't admire or want to be. But that's who I am when I'm just me. Like my default position is not a good one. I know that now. Like I know that because I lived it. I know that for myself in my day-to-day life, when I start when I'm disconnecting from God, so I'm not thinking about him, I'm not letting him into whatever's going on, I'm just reacting to what's happening. That's always when I say or do things I regret. Always. That's whenever I let God into something, I don't walk away wishing it had been different. When I have regret, or when I have self-doubt, or when I have, you know, bad feelings about something now, it's because I was just being me. Like who I am at my core is screwed up and broken and weak and selfish. That's what it comes down to. So when there's benefit to something, when there's either any kind of power or intimacy or value in something, it's because of him. It's because of his influence on me. And when I'm sharing stuff, like when I'm talking about things, especially the Bible, the Christian life, the just dealing with life. When I'm talking about that and it has value, it's because I'm literally listening to him, reading what he says, and then sharing it. I'm just relaying. So I'm taking it in from him, and then I'm just giving it out to you. It's not coming from me. And I think a lot of times people confuse the messenger with the message. And I don't want people to do that. I don't want to be seen to be having answers, because I don't. But he does, and I'm listening. And that has value. Like I'm not this the way I see it, I'm in a relationship with God where he's the dad and I'm the daughter. So that doesn't mean, so I'm an adult daughter. It doesn't mean I have no responsibility. It doesn't mean my decisions are worthless or that I can't um, take responsibility for things that I do, both good and bad. It's on me, the decisions that I make. I can choose to listen to him, and I can choose to absorb what he says, and I can choose to give that back out to you. Or I can choose to ignore him or deny him. I can just listen to myself and my feelings and my desires, which are very corrupt, and I can mess stuff up. Um, Either way, the responsibility for that is on me. So I'm not saying I'm not a robot. I'm not trying to say I'm without, I have free will. I have choices. I have responsibility. And that goes in both directions. But I guess what I'm wanting you to understand is that what I'm communicating to you didn't start with me. It starts with him. And what I had a really interesting conversation with a friend last night, and some conversations over the past week or two that made me realize that the biggest obstacle people have to true intimacy with God, where, people say to me, how can you talk about him like you know him? Like, how can you talk about him like he's a person? Um, and I get it. God's invisible. That's how I guess the tangible mind works. It looks like you're looking at the wind and giving it a face. And how can you do that? But what I realized was, um, I wanted to explain how that happens, and that that's not unique to me. And that if you want that relationship with God where you feel like you know who he is, it's not just this sort of instruction book that you're applying to your life. You actually have a relationship with a person. You hear their voice, you understand their tone, you know their motives, you get what they think is funny, you get what makes them angry, like that knowing of someone. We can have that with God. And I think a lot of people feel really unconfident about that. How do I have that with God? And so basically, I want to tell you what I think about how you can have that with God, and why it seems hard to find, or why we doubt it, I guess. So the thing that keeps coming to me lately in conversations that I'm having with women about, problems in their lives, like real problems, the big stuff, the hard stuff, the stuff that kind of consumes your attention. The thing that keeps coming up that I realize that I have, that a lot of people haven't got to yet, is an understanding of God's character. And by that, I mean his personality, like how he acts and how he thinks and how he feels as a person. And I realized that God's character, his personality, like who he is, that's so critical to understanding not only your relationship with him, like one-on-one, but also why life is the way it is. Because if God, put it to you this way, if God is a tyrant of some kind, and by that I mean, he likes to set rules and basically enforce them. And that's what he's about. Like if his personality is driven by a desire to be, kingpin, then that speaks to his motives, because what he's after in that situation is power and recognition of his power. And that means that when something bad happens in my life, if that's what God's like, it's happening in an effort to shove me down and increase his own, if not value, then just power, straight power. And we see that in our relationships with people. There's a lot of people, we all come in contact with them, who their intent and their motive is to drive us down so that they can appear to be up. They can appear to be stronger or bigger or better, whatever. So if we view God that way, if we think that's what his character is like, it impacts how we feel about the stuff that we're going through. But if we truly, and I don't just mean in concept, I mean if we feel, we believe that God actually intimately, personally, individually loves me, loves you, like knows you and adores you exactly as you are, exactly who you are, is excited to see you. His eyes light up when you walk in the room. Like if that's the kind of person that he is, it changes what it means when bad things happen. Because if you're dealing with somebody who is at their core gentle and affectionate towards you, like if somebody who when they see you, they smile and they pull you close and they want to talk to you and they want to hear what's going on and they want to be involved in what's happening in your life and hear your thoughts and your opinions and like all of that sense of, of thrill that we get from the best relationships that we have. If that's where God's coming from, it puts a different filter on when he allows bad things into our lives, hard events, painful things. It's just been coming home to me over the last few days that that's what's going on. People don't know God as a person. They know him as a ruler or as a power, and they hope for some kind of personal connection, but they're afraid of it too because they don't get who he is at his heart. You know, when they say, you know, if you had to pick one word to describe a person, what would it be? So that's not the only thing that person is. When you pick a word, what you're picking is the impression that comes across most strongly, the thing that you think they are the most, right? So if I take that and apply it to God, when I look at him and when I think about him and what I know about him and what the word says about him, the primary, like the core characteristic of his personality, the word that he uses to describe himself, and the word that I now use to describe him is love. And, you know, we've heard, those of us who've been Christians for a long time, we've heard God is love for, you know, till the cows come home. Just because you have that information doesn't mean you believe it, doesn't mean you feel it. But I'm realizing that even though I hadn't thought about it in those terms, that phrase, God is love, is the most important fact about him that any of us can ever come to know. Because if it's true, it colors and informs every single thing he does. Like if that's the first and foremost position in his heart when he looks at me or when he looks at you, that changes what it means when he lets something come into our lives that we don't like.